Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Raymond Yeung. Here are tonight's top stories. More than 30 people, mostly children, are killed in an attack on a childcare facility in Thailand. Locally, a former policeman is jailed for 4 years for lewd conduct towards his young son. And people go to restaurants in larger groups as more restrictions are scrapped. At least 36 people, most of them children, have been killed in a shooting rampage in northeastern Thailand. The gunman was a former police officer who later killed his wife and child before shooting himself. Chloe Fong reports.
Thailand is in deep shock as mass shootings are extremely rare. Around lunchtime today, ambulances raced to take casualties to hospital after a former policeman went on a shooting rampage at a daycare center in the town of Isai Saiwan, 500 kilometers northeast of Bangkok. Bodies of children were laid on the ground, covered with white sheets. About 30 children were inside the center when it was stormed by a former policeman armed with a gun and a knife. He first shot 4 or 5 officials, including a teacher who was 8 months pregnant. He then forced his way into a locked room where children were sleeping and killed at least 23 of them. 3 of the children were 2 years old. The other victims included teachers and police officers. 12 people were wounded. The gunman then fled and returned home, where he killed his wife and child before taking his own life. He was identified as 34-year-old Panya Kamrap, who was sacked from the police force last year for taking drugs. The motive for the carnage remains unclear. Thai Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha offered his condolences to the families of the victims and ordered an urgent investigation. Chloe Fong, HKIBC.
Here in Hong Kong, a veteran policeman has been sentenced to 4 years in prison for lewd conduct towards his son. His sentence was lengthened as the judge said he had violated the public's trust in the force. A High Court jury last month convicted a former police officer of indecent conduct towards his child. The court heard that the 48-year-old man, whose identity was concealed, had repeatedly shown pornographic material to his son between 2016 and 2018. In one instance, he live-streamed himself having sex with his former wife. He also demanded his child, who was 10 to 12 years old at the time, to masturbate. Describing the case as a tragedy, High Court Judge Alex Lee slammed the defendant for his shameless and disgusting behavior. A psychiatric evaluation indicated that the boy felt helpless at times and was hospitalized twice for having suicidal thoughts. The judge rejected the defense's plea for leniency, insisting the defendant had violated the public's trust in a police officer. Lee sentenced the man to 20 to 24 months for each of his 4 convictions, some to be served consecutively for a total of 4 years. The defendant, who was a policeman for 21 years, was also dismissed from the force and stripped of his retirement benefits. He faces additional fraud and child abuse charges in separate cases. COVID infections have surpassed 4,000 for the first time this month. There were 4,318 new cases, including 325 which were imported. 6 patients died from the virus. Among the 1,699 hospitalized patients, 210 are newly admitted and 15 are in intensive care. The head of the MPF expects more employers to stop paying for their staff's pension because of the poor economy.
We are concerned about possible rising incidences of default contributions. And that is understandable as well because of the economic situation. And that is why the NPFA has introduced additional measures to assist affected employees in recovering default contributions.
Labour Minister Chris Sun assured that his department will help to ensure that employers fulfill their responsibilities. He added that the department has been in touch with High Sea Cake Shop, which has yet to contribute to its workers' MPF payment. Restaurants received a boost today as they can now seat up to 12 diners per table and remove partitions between them. But an industry representative believes that caterers need more time before their business returns to pre-COVID levels. Janice Low reports.
After almost 3 years, restaurants can finally operate at full capacity. Up to 12 diners can sit at the same table with all partitions removed. This woman went to Yum Cha this morning with 23 of her Cantonese opera classmates. They occupied 2 adjoining tables, whereas before today, they would have to be seated at 4 tables at least. She felt very happy as they weren't able to meet in a group since COVID hit Hong Kong. With restaurants running at full capacity, this staff member said business has improved, but he expected to do better at dinner time, as the number of people who can attend banquets has been doubled to 240. He added a diner spends around $500 in the evening hours, at least 10 times more than daytime customers. Simon Wong, the president of the Federation of Restaurants and Related Trades, believes that banquets can boost business.
Probably start from today, I see that especially during dinner time, the business will grow by at least 10% from yesterday. I'm quite optimistic about the banquet business before year end, and the business for this sector will jack up by about at least 30%.
But Wong estimates that it will take time for restaurants to recover. He said the catering business can return to its pre-COVID levels if the mainland border is reopened and all restrictions for arrivals are dropped. Janice Low, HKIBC.
Overseas again, North Korea launched 2 more ballistic missiles today in the 6th test in less than 2 weeks. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol reacted by accusing the North of provocation. He added that the nuclear-powered aircraft carrier USS Ronald Reagan, which had left after taking part in joint military exercises, had returned to South Korean waters. Pyongyang said it was those drills that triggered its latest missile test. 2 short-range missiles were fired towards its eastern waters. On Tuesday, North Korea sent an intermediate-range missile over Japan. That prompted the United States to call for an emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council. At the Security Council meeting, the U.S. accused China and Russia of encouraging Pyongyang by voting against fresh penalties.
The DPRK has enjoyed blanket protection from 2 members of this council. These 2 members have gone out of their way to justify the DPRK's repeated provocations and block every attempt to update the sanctions regime. In short, 2 permanent members of the Security Council have enabled Kim Jong-un.
Chinese envoy Geng Shuang countered the U.S. claim by urging Washington to create conditions that will prompt Pyongyang to negotiate. He noted that China and Russia have urged the UN to improve the humanitarian situation in North Korea as part of efforts to build up trust among all parties. Russian Representative Anna Evstikneva said it was obvious that U.S. military exercises made Pyongyang feel that it has to defend itself. A handful of residents on a small Greek island braved treacherous conditions to pull shipwrecked migrants to safety. The dramatic rescue took place on Kythera, about 225 kilometers south of Athens. It happened after a boat carrying up to 100 migrants capsized in rough seas when winds were billowing at 70 kilometers an hour. Many of those on board reached the shore, but were confronted by a steep cliff. Residents at the top threw ropes down and helped the migrants clamber to safety. The operation was risky as high winds could have blown away rescuers and migrants. At least 30 people were rescued. Other migrants were saved by Coast Guard vessels and a helicopter. The Hong Kong property market faced more gloom after a U.S. investment bank predicted that private home prices will fall by as much as 30% by the end of next year. Rising mortgage rates have continued to hurt market sentiment. Chloe Fong reports.
As interest rates rise faster than expected, home prices in the world's most unaffordable property market are expected to tumble. U.S. investment bank Goldman Sachs has updated its forecast on Hong Kong home prices, predicting that they will plummet by 15% this year and another 15% next year from the levels they were at the end of 2021. Previous forecasts put home prices declining 20% by 2025. Goldman Sachs revised its estimates after official figures showed that last month, prices dropped 2.3% to its lowest level in 3.5 years. For the first 8 months of the year, home prices were down 6.5%. The U.S. bank adjusted its forecast after the faster-than-expected rise in the Hong Kong interbank offered rate, or HKIBC, which affects 90% of local mortgages. The 3-month HKIBC is at its highest in 14 years after the Monetary Authority raised its base interest rate in lockstep moves with the U.S. Federal Reserve. The momentum could continue as the Fed has signaled more rate hikes in coming months. Other factors contributing to the price decline include an increase in the supply of homes and the border closure with the mainland, which dampened property investment. The ongoing outflow of people from Hong Kong has led to the biggest decline in household numbers since the handover. Transactions this year are likely to fall to a record low, according to the Centerline Property Agency. Chloe Fong, HKIBC.
Hong Kong stocks retreated today after making massive gains yesterday, with the Hang Seng Index dipping slightly. Travel-related stocks kept up their upward momentum, with Air China soaring almost 10% and China Southern Airlines rising 6.3%. Mainland lithium battery maker CALB ended flat on its debut at its offer price of $38 a share. The firm raised $1.3 billion in Hong Kong's biggest initial public offering so far this year. Auto firms skidded into negative territory. Brilliance Auto continued its plunge, diving 16%. Great Wall Motor lost 5.3%, and Geely was down 3.8%. Now let's take a look at the markets. The Hang Seng ended the day down by 75 points. To the top 10 active stocks, Tencent was down by $1.20, Alibaba down $1.05, while Meituan was up $2.20. To the forex trading against the Hong Kong dollar, the euro's at 7.74, pound sterling at 8.84, while the Australian dollar at 5.07. Over in Europe, the London FTSE is currently down by 52 points. On to the weather now. Sunny intervals and a few showers tomorrow. Temperatures will range between 26 and 31 degrees. Similar conditions over the weekend. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for Thursday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Raymond Yeung. Good evening.